Lead pipes. I saw that. That was your bio.
Yep.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yep.
Lead pipes. Who came up with that?
I don't know if I'm the one who originally mentioned it or Gio Bennett, original founding guitarist of Nomad, used to call me like lead throat.
Lead throat.
And he to this day, in a very nice way, calls me the golden throat, which he's way off on that. But I always called myself the bronze throat. But I just altered it when I put that up.
Lead pipes, man.
Yeah.
So, just like all the cool, like terms, music-related terms and, band terms and like slang from the 70s. That shit needs to come back. I'm always bringing it back because I use all that crap and my kids laugh at me, but
we try to too. But it even in the genre that we're in, just to be different than everybody else. But yeah, it's out there. You just got to find the bands that are, trying to carry it on and keep it alive. They're few and far between, though.
Do you have any interesting observations about the genre you folks play in? Because I view you the best of country, the style you do, and the quality of music, because it has a rock and roll flavor bent vibe, cool word, vibe, right out of the 70s. It just has that thing, and I know we talked prior that sometimes that's in vogue, sometimes it's not,
yeah.
but that's who you folks are, and that translates to a guy like me who doesn't intently always listen to country music, but you guys I can listen to because it's got that thing, it resonates with me.
Well, I'm allowed to swear on here, right?
Fucking right.
So, number one, if I am going to tell you where my thoughts are on it right now, and they're not great.
Yeah.
And you basically said you don't make a point of listening to country. We really don't listen to it anymore, and we haven't for a while. It's sad to say, but I'll get back to that. But
right on.
You just said a little phrase that we have loved in what we've done we've been together for 18 years now. This is insane.
That is insane.
But throughout the years, no matter the age, well, depending on how they phrase it, but no matter the age or demographic or whatever, the coolest thing we can hear, people come up to us and their words are, "We fucking hate country, but we love you guys." And I'm like, you just made my day. That's our goal right there.
And I'm guessing you hear that a lot.
We do. And I mean, it's just the coolest thing ever because, as much as we transformed into a country band, we all come from, and you know this from talking to me and Bob and other people, I mean, we come from rock, hard rock, metal, pop, all that stuff. I mean, and it's more of a hard rock thing is probably the core of it. And when we decided to transition into it, that's exactly where country was headed. I mean, Keith Urban, Rascal Flatts, Big and Rich, that kind of stuff, they were all like, Big and Rich I always use as an example because when they were looking for their first deal, even though they were huge songwriters previous, like successful songwriters, they went in and sat down and they go, "Look, we're not going to bullshit with you guys. Full electric guitars, leads, maybe a fiddle here and there, but we're focusing on the rock." And I mean, this was constantly in their videos and things like that. And that's where it was going. And that's when we jumped on, we're like, this is us, you know?
Yeah.
And we were told before we claimed to be a country band, you guys are writing what are becoming country songs and you don't even realize it. I think I might have said that before, but so yeah, I mean, that's, we pride ourselves on that from day one.
You dig Aldine?
Yes, not newest Aldine, and there were eras of him. He went that hick hop route, it was called, where he was rapping and stuff over dance beats and stuff.
Yeah,
and I'm like, what is going on?
He's the last person should be rapping.
Exactly. I mean, that's kind of the thing. Artists came along, even more so, present day, that probably fit the bill better.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, he definitely for a period of time embodied that hard rock and country thing, and he was proud of it.
Now where's he at? I haven't heard anything recently from him.
I mean,
not since the tragic shooting.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't lost that completely, but everybody. I mean, I use Keith Urban a lot when I get angry and talk about this, but
sorry,
no, it's I enjoy talking about it in a weird way, but that he went the route that the industry has dictated that everybody go. and that is just a little more artificial instrumentation, fake drum beats behind things, and that kind of stuff.
Tracks.
But then with incorporating, a Strat or a crunch guitar here and there.
But it's always backed off, though.
That's the thing. It wasn't for a point in time. It really wasn't.
I know. It was featured.
Yeah, it wasn't in your face, but it was just definitely more prominent for, I'll say a solid good 10 years. And we were riding the train during that time. And I mean, people were eating it up and we loved it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If I didn't say this back in our previous stuff, like we won this Kenny Chesney competition. He only did it for 1 year called Kenny Chesney's Next Big Star. And that's when it was in 2008. Right. And things were popping in 2008. Right. And I mean, we got to play Heinz Field. We got to hang out with all the, and I mean, I'm reminiscing, but that's when it was in its prime, in my opinion.
Ironically, it seemed to be that when country and rock were melding in a great way, it seemed to also coincide with the heydays of that unfortunate but popular television show, American Idol.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep, I agree. And I mean, there were... they were bringing the people that were succeeding at it, even if they didn't win, some of them had that vibe. Mm-hmm. And you're right.
So what are you seeing in 2022?
Man, we were told years ago that there is a literal, and we didn't believe it at the time, but the more and more it evolved, the more I believed it. But we were told that like by people... in the know and songwriters that were like involved in selling songs to bigger artists and such, that there's a formula. There's a literal formula that they even made it sound like was on paper. And it's like, do you mention a classic country artist in your song? Do you reference a truck, a this, a that in your song? And it's like a flow chart. And it's like, no, you're screwed. Yes, go this direction. And and now, I got my wife into country and she swore she would never like it, right? And I swore I would never like it for a long time. And I got her into it. And now she's still a big fan, and I'm not. I've lost my taste for it. And don't get me wrong, there is, if you weed through it, there's some good stuff. But you really got to weed through it these days. So, like, everything I hear now is I'm referencing whoever. I'm referencing a classic rock artist, a classic country artist. I'm doing my lyrics in a more rhythmical rap type way. I'm singing, but I'm still doing it in a different way. And there's nothing wrong with that.
That was like, so what you just described there, I've been told by artists from the 70s that was almost, you never sang to the melody in the 70s. Very rarely was it popular. You never sang to the melody in the 70s. It was almost like you absolutely were told not to do that.
Yeah. And but there are just that formula that I talked about seems so prevalent right now that I want to shoot myself, because every fucking song is a photocopy of the previous one. And you listen to a typical terrestrial radio station, and you're hearing those 30 songs, with the exception of people like Chris Stapleton, who is the godsend of country music. He's still a genuine, in every way, I think, kind of guy musically. Right. And there are a few other ones, but besides that, they're regurgitating.
It's so frustrating, eh?
It is. I mean, and it always comes back to, for us, I mean, I'll sound like the bitter guy who didn't make it or whatever, but it always comes back to who you know, how much money you have, what avenues you're making.
Still exists. I mean,
alive and well.
Anyone that thinks it doesn't is just fooled.
It's just in different ways now. That's
absolutely.
They just package it in different ways. It's not actual money.
There's been 4 or 5 different incarnations, but the currency is still there.
Yep. And the current one, and it's been around. It's been going on for a while. Is we'll play. It's never said out loud probably, but come to town and do a free show. We'll supply you with everything. If you do that, we'll give you more spins. And that's how it works. I mean,
really?
Oh yeah, that's the gold standard today. And I mean, obviously the pandemic affected that for 2.5 years. But previous to that, like I won't mention stations, but stations would put on events where they'd bring in like 8 artists at a pop, do an acoustic show, and they'd have everything ready for them, take care of them, rooms, food, all the backline, everything they need. They'd do it for nothing, or, I mean, to my knowledge, for nothing or very little. But the reward was spins out the wahoo for the time that they started promoting this until the time that it's over, which is easily a few months.
And did it actually happen? Did they follow through?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and a lot of times these were up-and-comers that, they were on a label, but they weren't anywhere near, whatever, Kenny Chesney status, nothing like that. So they were willing to do this. And I mean, I would have been too. I would have done it in a heartbeat.
Certainly.
But it was just that they had the start of being signed to a label first.
Got it.
You know what I mean? And whether they were famous or popular or getting plays at that point or not, it didn't matter. They were signed. And that's when you really don't get looked at these days, and for a long time, unless you have that by a radio station. And I mean, satellite might be a little different, and I kind of get a vibe that they do here and there give folks some play that aren't necessarily signed, but they feel really strong about. But terrestrial, man, it's all a big machine.
Is it partially because they fear their business model is going to evaporate soon?
Yeah, I would say yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're not taking
desperation.
They're not taking risks. Yes,
right.
And I will mention a station specifically because they've supported us to this day. Froggy is one. I mean, Danger and everybody
very well.
They came up with a model that they still use, and it was genius. That somehow Frank Bell, who was at one point,
love that guy,
and he came up with this idea, and it was genius that they found a way to utilize just like seconds of advertising space per slot per day. They put that all together, and they were able to put unsigned artists in those spots. And I'm like, that's genius. I mean, it really was. And I mean, we definitely got some kick off of that. I mean, we were charting on the the media based charts for a period of time because they were playing our song enough.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, this is crazy. We're nobodies technically, and we're charting in the 60s.
Yeah.
Which again, that's nothing. You got to be 30 or above.
Yeah.
But it was still like to see it there. I'm like, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah. I'm surprised, Dave. That station has been. Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, Lynn Debon is just a great business person and solid guy. Frank Bell was amazing, but Frank's not been there for quite a while.
No.
And they certainly have had their challenges too. The recession of the early 2010s.
Yeah.
And they moved around a little bit.
Yep.
And but they found a way to make it. And I like, again, not being a country music fan, I have a laugh with Danger. Like I said, do you realize how many minutes a year I probably actually hear you on air? Probably like 3. But it's obvious to me, though, that there's a huge difference between their competitor.
No
they
doubt.
have 2 competitors in town, but they're in the way that they operate.
Correct.
Now, some people don't like the way they operate. Some people do. That's just the way life is. But to me, it's a unique business model that kind of bucks the current terrestrial trend, right?
Yep. They have more of kind of like a down home.
They're more attached with their community.
Correct.
I think.
Whereas the other 2 they're big corporate machines, and there's no way, there's no discussion around that. That's what they are.
Yeah.
And I mean, they clean house every couple years, and it's all new people all in the back, in the back office and the front office. And that's a bummer,
See, it's interesting too. We've had so many conversations, even on this podcast, about the history of terrestrial radio and also where it possibly is going. And I hate to say this, man, but I really think outside of the sports genre, because sports are just so embedded in this country.
That's a good point.
But from a music standpoint, we're maybe a generation or 2 away from terrestrial radio not being relevant at all from a music standpoint.
Agreed. And honestly, I'm not sure how it is now. And maybe it is hanging by a thread more than I realize. But I mean, even in our discussions and talking to everybody, I mean, it's whatever you want is available everywhere you want. You don't need a radio. All you have is your phone
On
most
demand.
of the time. I mean, and you listen to what you want to listen to.
Yet that's been around for 15 years, definitely for a solid 10 years.
Right.
on demand like that.
Right.
But yet the terrestrial radio stations are still here.
And advertisers are still paying them. So that's baffling to me. I mean, the sports thing, you touched on an important thing. That's a totally different animal, and people love to be in their cars driving, listening to sports talk. I mean, I've even, I feel like, whatever, I feel like I'm getting to be an old man because I kind of do that here and there as well. But it's usually my phone tied into my thing or satellite radio. Those are my two things.
Yeah. I've been very fortunate through this show to befriend Paul Alexander, who I can definitely consider a friend at this point. And I've gotten a unique window into that whole industry. And to me, I mean, he's one of the best at what he does that this town's ever had.
Agreed.
And quite frankly, very underappreciated at times. But it's interesting to see how that's evolved as well too, because that sports talk thing has changed and evolved, and there's been some really quirky, weird decisions made, and corporate culture comes in there too, because I'm sure ESPN grabs a lot of channels, and Odyssey I think grabs a few, and iHeartRadio's got a couple. But I mean, how do you keep track of that? As a local artist, how do you possibly keep track of like who's calling the shots now?
Right. You know? I don't know the answer to that. I wish I did.
Yeah, and it didn't. I don't think the corporate radio helped an industry that also is being devalued. We talked about it before, where is the actual song valued anymore?
Yep. And
it would have been almost a heroic thing if terrestrial radio could have found ways, or even satellite radio found ways to help the artist by, I don't know, doing something to increase the value of the product as opposed to being something that is just kind of given. The illusion is it's just given away.
Right. And I mean, I don't know what like Sirius pays to play the songs that they play, but that in combination with like, I think of, I listen to, I hate what it's called, but I listen to Hair Nation on a regular basis, right?
I do too. It's in my car.
And you can, if you like look at any social media relating to it and stuff, for a chunk of time, it's improved more recently, but for years, and I think this is what a lot of stations have done, like they bought a chunk of music and regurgitated it forever. And like, so you heard the same bands, the same songs constantly. And I got so frustrated with it, I'd unsubscribe and then resubscribe and check it out and unsubscribe and resubscribe. And now they have they've branched off into like Hair Nation Party Channel, Hair Nation Deep Cuts, which they must have bought another chunk.
Sure.
And even going back to the original station, same thing. Like they've purchased new chunks. So it has gotten better, but I just wonder, to do it in that kind of volume, I mean, because it is a somewhat of a sizable volume of songs, and I wonder how much the artist is really benefiting that. Like you're saying, like, could they be doing more to benefit the artist? Because the one thing that pisses me off about those stations, the ones I listen to the most, is they will not play new music from the artists. And to me, that's just bullshit. And I guess
has not always been kind of going on, though.
Well, I mean, I guess, but like compare it to country stations on satellite and terrestrial, they're jumping on new artists.
That's interesting.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Whereas my guys are classic now, classic rock and classic hard rock.
Their new stuff isn't taken seriously.
Correct. Whereas, I mean, I think this is one of the very first things you and I talked about is there's so much good music that hasn't been heard, and it's, a lot of people say, well, it's the same old bullshit that, like, no. People have evolved. People have written more mature music because they've grown older and more mature and blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't get the light of day.
But I laugh at those people who say it's the same old bullshit. Well, I almost want to say, well, same old bullshit. I mean, you're damn right. It's the foundation is right there.
Yeah, and I mean, I might have used the wrong term.
No, but you're right. I've heard that exact phrase from people.
Yeah, in the sense that they're like, well, it's all about sex and women. I'm like, yeah, no. I mean, there are tunes. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, you loved those for a reason. But they've written songs about the current times and life experiences since then and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
People can relate to them. I mean, I do. Call me whatever, but I still do.
Yeah.
These guys right here, everybody still laughs about probably.
What's wrong with that?
Reb Beach, Pittsburgh native.
Damn
and
straight.
Killer guitarist.
Trying to get him here.
But I've played with them. We can talk.
We need to be on this, Reb.
But I mean, their newer tunes are just so well written and produced, and not about 17 and that shit as much anymore. Yeah. I mean, nowhere near, as a matter of fact.
Well, society's changed. You know, we can all have our own personal preferences. I think sometimes it's a little overboard with the way it changed, but I respect the change because that's what people want.
Yeah.
I get it. Totally get it. But at the same time, I mean, look, one of the most lewd bands ever is out on a stadium tour. Freddie's out there with them right now.
Let's talk.
And it's sold out. So my argument is, yeah, I mean, we're woke and politically correct and all this stuff, but people are still going. So it's like the hypocrisy is, you know, again, I'm not on a political soapbox because I hate them all, but I just think that, quite frankly, it's hypocritical to take a side that all this stuff, all of a sudden, it makes these people who created it evil. But then if you go and let someone peek at your playlist, you might have, you know,
Exactly.
Dr. Dre or Snoop Dogg or, you know, Van Halen, or you're going to have misogynistic music as the way that's created in today anyways. You know, you need to walk the walk and talk the talk, or talk the talk and walk the walk, or whatever, and that's just not happening. There's a lot of hypocrisy right now.
Agreed.
With slamming other people.
Yep.
Which is just nuts.
Yep. But I mean, I you know, the sold out thing, I'm a realist in the sense that they had to create a great package in order for that to happen.
No question.
And I think they did. Like, could Motley have done this by himself? No way.
No, neither could Def Leppard.
No.
And Def Leppard probably would have sold more than Motley.
Agreed. I definitely think you're right.
I mean, and well, I'll be honest with you and blunt. I think that the problem there is not the content or the catalog. I think it's the fact of how Vince has degraded himself for so long, and the public perception is going into this, and kind of been validated to some degree along the way that he's just not fit to perform. Now, had he been in fighting weight and he still would have worked on his pipes, they would have it would be different.
Yep. I love the fact that you used fighting weight because I use that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and again, I mean, I'll be real harsh. I mean, Nikki, from all of what Fred said, Nikki Sixx is like the coolest, sober, badass cat imaginable. He's treating Fred, who's like my blood brother, like the most. He's treating him amazingly. Fred's having a time of his life.
That's great.
And Nikki is someone I even follow on social media, and I generally don't follow musicians, rock, famous musicians in terms of national acts, but they, Vince had years to prepare for this.
That's where I was going.
And get delayed. It's almost like shame on you. And that's where it's hard for me as a Kiss fan, David, to be that upset with the backing tracks and all that stuff, because the fact that when I look up there, man, Stanley's 70 and he's like svelte, he's killing it.
Looks like a rock
Gene's
star.
still in good shape, singing pretty well. Like, they're putting on the best possible show they can, and it's not laughable. Whereas, sometimes you see Vince at like that pot belly and all that. He had time to fix that stuff.
Yep.
And for his bandmates, he didn't do it.
Correct. And
that's all. I'm off my soapbox.
No. And I'll follow up with it. I mean, and you just I was going to start by saying, pandemic hits, it's the perfect time. It's a silver lining where, shit, I wasn't ready, but now I have time to get ready and come out killing.
And he had an extra year because it initially was put on for 21.
Correct.
He had 24 months.
Yeah, and that's what I was telling you. I got this show that I'm going to on Friday was my Christmas present in 2019.
Right on. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah.
I just feel almost like not everybody's bought in. And the shame of it is, like, if you look at Mick Mars, it looks like he's playing better than he's ever played.
And I mean,
it's crazy.
And he's still dealing with the physical conditions that he has. I mean,
and that's a medical.
Yeah, I mean,
bad medical condition.
He's lucky to still be.
One just overeats.
Yeah, exactly.
And drinks too much beer, I guess. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like,
that's my issue.
And I kept having hope for him because he's done this in tours past over the years. He's let himself go, not this bad, but he's let himself go, and then his mantra was, I'm gonna just kick myself in the ass for a few months leading up to it and be ready. And a lot of times he was.
Yeah, we're not 30 or 40 years old anymore.
Obviously,
I think that's the problem.
Big factor. You're right.
I think that's it's just the body doesn't really, and combination of the pipes. Now again, as a fan, I never thought live he was that great of a singer. Anyways, he was always out of breath, and he let the audience sing a lot of the choruses. I get it. But I just think that he's the weak link in their performance right now. But musically, sonically, man, from the things I've seen, they're just freaking killing it.
Yep. And I mean, I will say, like, in probably first 2 albums of theirs, if you watch a lot of live stuff, I mean, he was kicking ass vocally, too. He was reproducing.
He was 20 years old and in shape.
Hell yeah. He was reproducing a lot of what they were recording, which was good. But yeah, I mean, same with me. I mean, I watched the video, and that's what I've been doing since the tour started. I want to see who's coming out of the box swinging and stuff. And I said it from day one. I mean, Motley musically sounds great, but I said it from day one, whether you're a fan or not. I'm like, Poison's going to kill on this tour, and they are killing on this tour. Like, everybody is at the top of their game. CC, of all people. Out of his mind. Yeah, of all people.
He obviously took some guitar lessons in the past couple of years.
He looks great. They all look good for what they're doing. I mean, Brett sounded good. I mean, one of the kickers is, I don't know if you know this or not, but they come on at like 6 p.m. and they're doing like a 10-song set that includes a drum solo and a guitar solo. So, I mean, to me, that's perfect.
No doubt.
If I'm on that tour, that's where I want to be.
Yeah.
And they're taking full advantage of it. And I mean, I keep reading article after article. Poison is like, Def Leppard. I think they're doing a great job, but they're always
you expected that. Though.
They're a produced
Polished.
show, and they come out and they do their shit and they do it well. But do they have like the energy and get the crowd involved and stuff?
Joe doesn't have it,
right?
In terms of the energy, I mean, vocally it seems okay. He really looks older than his age, doesn't he? Like he's like really, really aged. And you see Vivian up there, who wasn't an original Def Leppard member, but I mean, Vivian's in like fighting shape, and so is Phil Collins.
Oh yeah, Phil. I mean,
it's nuts.
He's just on a thing where
and to hear them play together, like the dueling stuff, is impressive.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the show in general. I'm hoping like
their stage show is pretty impressive.
Yeah, but like I always watch for artists that I'm worried about how they're going to perform. I watch what is leading up to it, and thankfully, like Motley in particular has a few days off in between here.
Yes.
And like I have seen a few shows where Vince was tolerable.
Depends on the song.
Yeah. That's true. I haven't seen a show the whole way through.
Toward the end, it's a little. They play some of their best couples tunes in the end. They should probably swap those around a little bit. I mean,
good point.
But no, he just seems. It seems like he's trying. Which I mean, that there's something there. Like he does seem he's really trying, but he's just not gotten himself winded. Enough to get through the entire thing without making it so obvious to the fans that there's some issues.
Right. And you typically, like, just playing on a regular basis, I mean, you typically, if you're treating yourself normally and taking care of yourself to the best of your ability during that time, you do kind of get into a groove. Where
certainly.
I don't know that he's in that groove, you know what I mean? Like, or has gotten into it. Maybe, I'm trying to think of how many dates they have left. I think they go into September a little bit.
Well,
but
I have absolutely no inside information. And believe me, if I had it, I'd tell you, but I don't. Because Fred's pretty mum about things. But my gut tells me, I've asked him, but he won't commit to it. But my gut tells me there is no way that they're not taking this around the world. There's no way they're not taking this well beyond. And I think even if they drop other groups, and they become, and I can absolutely see an arena tour between.
There is rumbling about it already, anyway.
Yeah, because they're making a shit ton of money, and for the most part, I think people are really having a good time.
Right, and then they mix in, like you said, Def Leppard would probably be a good one to keep on the world level.
No
Poison,
doubt.
not necessarily. Bring in, I don't know. I mean, I don't know why, but like the Scorpions come to my mind.
Be amazing
because
Tribal.
Yeah, and folks that are gonna
or Maiden.
Pull in.
Maiden's pretty big now. I mean, they're still really freaking big.
Oh yeah,
they might not.
I don't know if they.
Else.
I don't know if they. Yeah, I don't know if they do it because I don't think they put themselves in that genre. Number one.
Europe though. Yeah, Maiden's something in Europe. There's like this, like they're way more popular in Europe than
South America. I mean,
yeah.
they're nuts. I mean, and I love that about them. I mean, they always stuck to their guns in everything they did, and
there's some really good minds in that band.
No doubt.
I think Steve Harris is pretty brilliant, and Bruce Dickinson obviously is a multi-talented. He's a pilot, commercial pilot.
He's so many things.
There's some things.
There's a
going on.
meme. I don't know. I wish I could remember, but there's a meme for him, and it's like, if you thought you were anything, Bruce Dickinson is, and it's like they list 10 things, and like 8 of them are things that you'd never imagine being in your lifetime.
So you go back. Well, go back to the 80s. Early 80s, and seeing him in Hit Parader and Circus. Did you ever think that that guy would have turned into all of that?
No. It's amazing.
I mean, because they were a force back then, but America was slow to catch on to them.
Yep. The world caught on way before we did.
Yeah. Any other bands come to mind that happened to?
I'm trying to think. Like I was like,
I don't have any.
My reflex, and I'm wrong. As soon as I thought about it, was Metallica. But I'm like, no, Metallica was huge here. But yeah, I'm trying to think of somebody similar to that.
Because usually when bands look back, they say it was breaking into America that made us. I'm not entirely sure that would be Iron Maiden's
what do you think of Queen?
Ooh.
Like,
Americans loved them, though.
They did, but I'm wondering if like. If we did catch on a little slow, like in the early 70s, leading up to like early, or late 70s, from when they started to late 70s.
That was a good one.
Maybe I don't know. That's a tough call.
Because I think in the 70s or the late 60s and 70s, bands came here to make it. Like the bands that were Zeppelin and the Who and
right.
But I wonder how popular they already were. Were the Beatles already popular and already popular in Europe and England before they came here?
Yeah, I think
Elton, maybe.
I think so. But I mean, America did take everybody to the next level in a lot of those cases.
Maiden didn't even seem like they needed them.
Yeah.
What about AC/DC?
Boy, you might know that better than me. I mean, I love them, but I'm not a deep dive on them.
They're national heroes in Australia.
Right.
Then let's think of Brian Johnson. They just catapulted in popularity over in England and Europe, but was it America that really speared them? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. That's a tough call. I don't know enough about them like in a deep dive to know the answer to that, but that's a good question. You have me thinking, like my head's spinning now with all these people.
No, because I think Americans, as American music fans, we are just naturally arrogant because it all kind of happens here, right?
Right.
They come.
At least we think that.
Yeah, we come here to break it, and we come here to do this, but it's interesting how some of these shred gods from the 80s and 90s have found a whole nother world of life and popularity in Japan.
Yep.
And are touring around Europe where sometimes they don't even want to come back. I think of Marty Friedman, from Megadeth initially, right?
Right.
But he's just made this incredible career as a solo artist in Japan, living like a king.
Right.
And just basically
and it's
just
not
doing clinics and things.
That's the thing. It's not worth to a lot of artists to come here as compared to just sticking to their guns as to what they're strong with. So they don't tour.
There's money in the third world.
Yeah.
Especially if you're an aging rock star.
Yeah.
I mean, I read a Kiss book years ago that they were saying how they looked at the third world in their lean times to go down there and just fill stadiums to make a shit ton of money.
Yeah, and think about Kiss. I mean, not even in the early days. In the early days, in their heyday, I mean, Japan was probably their biggest market.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They were insane for Kiss. I mean, more than we were, and I was insane for Kiss.
Yeah, I don't think the band will ever say this, but I believe that an argument can be made that they might have actually broke stronger overseas than they did here.
I think you might be right.
They might not admit that because it's not cool and sexy to admit that.
And even during probably like the lean times, which I would call like early 80s into like later 80s.
They made it.
They survived probably that way.
That's why they put a record out, and especially after Creatures, and Lick It Up there was uncertainty, and it hit, but that Glickman Marks sent them over to, when a coin was out of the picture, Glickman Marks sent them over to Europe right away with Phonogram, and then all through South America, Italy and Portugal, and then they just really wanted them to be successful there because I think there was an uncertainty of, and I think that a lot of bands probably went through that, right?
Yeah.
Coming out of the 70s.
Yeah, where things were going and if they were going to survive the era. I mean, you can reference the disco thing with Kiss, who took a little right turn with one album and then kind of went...
Two, actually.
Yeah, true.
Unmasked.
True.
Somewhat like that.
And then went back to their thing.
Unmasked is actually a kind of a pop album, I would say.
It's like the
ugly stuff.
Elephant in the room, I guess.
Is there
but
any
people
good track
love it.
The loyalty of it, yeah. I mean, Is That You? I thought was a good track, and there are just like 2 or 3 I could play, but it's like nothing you drive down the highway listening to.
There's a tune? It's a female's name on it.
Shandy.
Shandy.
Yeah, you're
like
a singer.
Shandy.
Yeah, and in Australia, that's so that album in general in Australia is massive.
Yeah,
my Boogie Street customers love that record.
And I mean that proves the point of, number one, like, beauty is in the ear of the beholder. You know what I mean? It's just, you try something in different places, it's successful here, and it's not there.
Well, I think it also has to do with those countries, sometimes musically, historically, not so much anymore because of everything's instantaneous, but they were kind of behind us a little bit. Like, what was cool here hadn't reached there yet. Not because they were inferior, it's just it hasn't reached their shores yet.
Right, it was different back then.
So Kiss was like peaking there after they were starting to ebb here.
Right.
And they just played it well.
Right.
If 83, before they took the makeup off at their worst moment, they went to Rio de Janeiro and played 300,000 people. It's like, I mean, nobody. They put like 4,000 people in the Superdome, I think. And right before 4,000 people in the Superdome.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, and yeah. So I mean, but then they went right to Rio and put this massive thing.
Could you imagine the high? I mean, the low and the high. I mean, of those two moments. That's insane.
I did ask Paul because we were bullshitting one time, and I said, "Hey, I saw the Lick It Up tour," and he goes, he actually said, "Yeah, the Stanley Theater." I said, "Yeah." He said, "You always remember that because it was after his last name." He liked that theater, but I said, were you cognizant that when you looked out, you saw 1,200 people as opposed to, what you were used to? And he said that it was an ego blow a bit when they realized the popularity was no longer with them.
Right.
But they were so, once you start playing, he goes, you forget all that stuff.
Yeah.
He says, but it was, looking out and seeing half-filled halls and all that stuff, he goes, it was an ego blow.
Yeah.
It would have to be.
Yeah. Going back to Motley, that was probably the same deal, when Vince left and blah, blah, blah. And
did you like that record?
Yes.
I did too.
Well,
I love Corabi.
I love John Corabi.
Yeah.
Now, I hated the record when it came out because it was just a little too just in your face, and I wasn't ready for that with Motley. It is, and I love John now. I mean, I just love everything he does. But yeah,
he's a good dude, solid guy.
He is.
Too.
He seems to be that way.
Yeah, Eric Singer and him are real tight.
That's cool. But yeah, I mean, they had to go through. They did go through the same thing. But just imagining that feel, and Motley went through it for a longer stretch of time for sure.
Mm-hmm. Did you remember that Vince had in the early '90s a solo record?
He has 3 out, and it's goofy that you said that because I just have a whole bunch of stuff on my Amazon Unlimited, and hit that out. The first album popped up today when I was walking my dog.
On that first album.
Oh, he had a couple. You're Invited, but your friends can't come.
That might be it.
Off a movie soundtrack.
And there was a good video to that one, wasn't there?
Yeah. Pauly Shore was in it. I mean,
I remember that. What were the other songs on there?
Sister of Pain was a hit. Was a single.
Okay.
Pretty good song. To me, the key to all that, whether people cared or not, was Steve Stevens was the guitarist on that album.
I love that guy.
He made that album.
Talk about one of the most underappreciated guitarists ever, from an energy and from a performance standpoint.
Dude, full-on flamenco guitarist who incorporated that in everything he did,
crazy
like
talent.
hard rock
wise. Crazy talent. And Billy Idol, I think Billy Idol knew what he had in him.
Yep.
But it was just like, man, he was like, because what a force they were when Idol hit. What was the hit song with that video? My mind exploded when I saw that. It was in 82 or 83. Rebel Yell.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, it was just as the energy was even coming out of Steve Stevens as much as it was Billy Idol.
It was.
It was insane.
He was a monster. I mean, and he still is a monster. But yeah, I mean, they were against the world at that point and doing everything in their power to take hold of it.
Yeah, he was such an enigma because he had all those punk roots, but then he just found his moment right there where he took hard rock out of punk, but then he had that punk identity. He was like, I always say he was like the stepson of Johnny Rotten.
Yep.
When I looked at him, like, Johnny birthed him.
Yep. But they just, like, he and Steve, I mean, they just took their songs, they just took some element of, like you said, the hard rock thing and made it more commercial and memorable.
Polished.
Yep. And I think that's what, you know.
Punk imagery, but metal and hard rock are in the early 80s with MTV. It was a perfect fucking marriage, man.
It was the line, like all the stars lined up.
And he's still got it. Like, I mean, he's still in great shape. I mean, I haven't seen any recent performances, but apparently when he goes out and plays the hits, I mean, people are generally pretty freaking happy with that.
Yeah, I haven't seen any video recently either. He looks a little different. I don't know if you've seen any.
Is it surgery?
It has to be. I mean, I still think he looks good, but if you compare, like, whatever, late 80s, mid 80s Idol with today, there's just... He had a great surgeon, I will say that. But he just doesn't look like himself.
Is he too polished now, visually?
It's like it's too perfect. It really is, especially for his age.
Yeah, I get it. No, that tends to be the problem, that they try to recapture their youth.
They pulled everything perfectly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think the intentions are always good. Right. And the surgeon probably always tells you that they're not going to make you look like a freak.
And he doesn't look like a freak.
So many of them just really, they stretch the skin so far it looks unnatural. Right. It looks rubber.
Right. Or puffy. I think those are all the injections and stuff.
Could be, but I think the puffy ultimately happens, I think, when folks that are in shape and they get plastic surgery, but then as they get older and their metabolism slows and they start to put weight on, then it does not age their face well at all.
Right. I think, and like, I mean, we're going in a weird direction, but
that's all right.
I think
that's like what we do here.
Hydration and stuff, all that shit changes too as you age, and that affects things that looked good when you first had it done.
Yeah, man. There's dude, of course, man. Of course. Who do you think, speaking of that, who do you think looks great for their age now from our generation musically that's still out doing it?
Man. See, I automatically think of a couple people that nobody knows.
That's right. They might know them.
Well, you and I, we touched on this for 3 seconds a long time ago. Right. There's a group called Heaven's Edge. They never got known, never really made it anywhere. But they, I saw them a few times over the last 10 years. And the lead singer, like, I met him once backstage at this meet and greet thing accidentally, and I like looked him in the face and I'm like, dude, what have you drank? What have you done? Because, and it wasn't surgery. It was just, you could tell. I mean, just guy had the perfect, he probably took care of himself, genetics. Great genes, all that stuff. But he hadn't aged like a second. And I'm like, what the? And he's like, I don't know, dude. I get it all the time, but I'm just happy that I'm that way. But I'm trying to think, like, big folks that have,
I think Stanley. Well. I mean, obviously, it's parochial to me, but I think Stanley looks great for a 70-year-old.
For a 70,
he's got an unusual look.
For a 70-year-old, yes,
he always did.
But like, I guess with a grain of salt, I'll say, and Paul's one of my biggest influences. Yeah. But I would say, like, if you put him in a normal lifestyle, short hair, didn't color it black all the time,
he wouldn't have any hair probably.
You just wouldn't see it the way you see it now. I mean, he takes care of himself without a doubt. Yeah. But the long black hair that he still has, the how he dresses, all that stuff definitely keeps him looking good.
I will tell you point blank that 15 years ago I thought, well, I could really get some great hair implants. Now I got this figured out. I was going to actually do it, and the reason I thought I'd go down that road was I still had quite a bit of hair, but I saw him like in 2008 or something. We were sitting there bullshitting, and I would never say anything, but I could tell he had like these incredible work done to his hairline.
Oh.
And it was like, God damn. Now, of course, if you got all an unlimited supply of money, you probably can get the best of the best, right?
Right.
But it's insane to see, like, the dude's hair at that age is nuts. Jagger always had unbelievable hair for his age. Now, he's 80.
Now, if he's not had anything done...
Come on, man.
I mean, that's a good point.
Now, Mick is always kind of unusual looking. And
correct.
If you're already unusual looking and you're ultra thin, you're going to have some wrinkles.
Right.
But you can't argue his ability to go out there and to perform.
And again, takes care of himself like a mother. I mean,
I know.
He's has a regimen that's...
And there's Richards, right? Who doesn't. And there it is. There's your longevity component right there.
Keith, we can't do any more drugs because you did them all. You remember Dennis Leary? He had this big thing on Keith. It was just, it's funny. But I mean, and you think about that. I mean, again, that's where genes take over, where hey, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to myself, and it's not going to matter, and I'm going to be fine, and blah, blah,
But
blah.
I think they take better care of themselves than they profess. Though.
Probably.
I think Gene left to his own devices would be a big, fat 300-pound guy.
Yeah.
I think there's people, including his wife and family, who make sure he does the right thing.
And I mean, he's vain enough though too, where while he's doing it, he's not going to be that 300-pound guy because
he's disciplined.
He trashes a ton of people.
He does love cookies though. He loves cookies.
Yeah, but I mean, he trashes people for that. So he's definitely not gonna become that.
He's a walking contradiction.
Yeah.
And I didn't say that. I heard that from a very good source around him. No names, but he is a walking contradiction.
Yeah, but whatever. He can do that because he's who he is.
They just added another 100 shows to their farewell to
They
tour.
did not.
Did you see that? Yeah, they just announced it. And the theory I have is that 73 was they started, so 2003 will be 50. I think they're trying to stretch it out to the 50th.
Right.
And then there probably is some marketing opportunities with that. The 50th.
They'll have all kind of new merchandise. They might release some kind of music. I don't know if it's going to be, the recycled thing they've done 1,000 times
lost
already.
Tracks.
Right.
Or the craziest theory I've heard yet right now, because they still like playing with Eric and Tommy because it's so clean and professional. And there's tracks in there, of course, but the shows are selling extremely well. They could go from the farewell tour to like our final thing is going to be the 50th anniversary tour. Before we go out, we're going to do one on our 50th birthday, and then drag that out till 2024 or 25. I mean, again, I'm just spitballing, but I've seen enough
at that point
to you know what I mean? Like
at that point, besides Eric and
I don't know,
it's going to be all tracks.
It might be. It's. I don't know. I lost my window into that with Fran's passing. I've lost. I don't even know. Is Fran? You've not been on since Fran passed, right?
No.
I had Fran Stuber, Pulse Tech on, and a couple months later, good friend. We lost him to COVID, which that made every newswire imaginable. I think we were the last formal interview that he gave. So that show ended up being really special, just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But I've lost my window into that band, and outside of a couple exchanges with Paul, I really don't have any inside view there anymore. But from an outside looking in, they're businessmen. I mean, nothing would surprise
day one.
Nothing would surprise me as the farewell tour turns into
evolving.
the 50th anniversary tour, and we're going to end it on the 50th year, which that'll take them into additional years.
Right.
You see.
They're like, well, things are going so well, we might as well.
Yeah, they just added 100 dates. They're supposed to be coming to an end.
That is insane.
They announced that 100 more dates.
They over doubled their original set of dates.
So if they come back to Pittsburgh again, that will be the third time on the same tour. Now they were notorious of doing coming back
looping
around.
Back. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's kind of cool. As a fan, you loved it, right?
Yeah.
But if it's the third one,
but you're, the more you say it, I'm thinking 50th. Yep.
Yeah.
Because I think the Scorpions.
I'm not going to stop on their 49th year.
Hell no, that would be taboo.
Come on,
right?
Man, come on.
Because the Scorpions just did that. But they.
Damn. 50 years.
Yeah, that's insane.
Of metal.
Yeah. Priest is doing that currently.
There's the band. They might have been more popular overseas.
Yeah, you might be. At least in Europe or so. Yeah. You might
British
be right.
Steel was the one that kind of broke them, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. That's a good call. Yep.
Maybe.
Yeah.
If I asked you this on a prior show, I apologize. But since we're on the topic of Iron Maiden and British metal, and if I ask you this question, I want to ask it to you again. So I can't remember how. Are you a deep Led Zeppelin fan or casual Led Zeppelin fan?
Casual. Much more appreciative in probably the last 10, 15 years.
Are you familiar with the 10-minute song called Achilles' Last Stand?
No. I was going to hopefully say only by name, but I'm not.
Yeah, it's a powerful track, and just being a Rush fan, I loved it because it was the closest thing I think they ever did that actually musically sounded kind of like Rush. But I've always contended if that song had never been written, we would never have seen an Iron Maiden, because everything that Maiden kind of became I find
came
it
from that.
rooted in that song. Not even just musically, but vocally too.
I'm going to listen to it on the way home.
Yeah, and people have disputed it, and I'm not right. I'm just saying it's just an opinion. But I go back to that song, and I say to myself, man, Steve Harrison and Dickinson and those cats, they must have really listened to this fucking tune a lot. Because it's all kind of rooted right there.
Kind of just like Zeppelin took all those blues tunes from everybody.
Was that ever litigated in court? Like, whatever ultimately happened?
It was. I don't know the full extent, but some people got their justified recognition, credits, and some money. But I don't think it was to the extent that it probably should have been, because a lot of people had died. And families.
It's so hard to go back and find justice for old musicians, man. Yeah. I mean, and hopefully they get something, but they never ultimately get what they really should get. What do you think about the 70s and 80s music experience that these young kids are missing? Like, what's like some of the main things you think that they're just missing that we either experienced or not intentionally, because we had no additional music skill than they did in terms of listening, but what are they missing in that music experience that we had?
I mean, the things that come to my head pretty quickly are, number one, you got a couple years on me, so you saw a little more than I did. No, that's a good thing in terms of music. That's okay. We're close enough, but I'm just saying those few years were important. Years.
They do matter in terms of like commonality and things.
But the one thing is we were experiencing like music that hadn't been created yet, or before, I should say.
Before,
and so
we were new.
Yeah, I mean, you think of, obviously, like the Beatles were the creators of a lot of stuff. Zeppelin, creators of a lot of stuff. But
Stones.
But the people, the Stones. But the people that were coming right after them, Aerosmith, Queen, Van Halen. Just all new ideas and just trying all different things. And today the comparison is, and this is an old guy talking, and there are songs titled this. It's all been done.
Yeah, but it's true.
And it's just like smushed together, if I can use the word smushed, and regurgitated it in just like, maybe a little bit of a different production or a little bit of a different this. But it's just, we got to see and hear things that hadn't been heard yet.
That's good.
That's number one.
That's good.
And to me, the other thing still, I'm still a CD guy. I'm subscribed to a streaming service. I listen to stuff on my phone all the time. I listen to satellite radio and get all that stuff. But I ultimately support and want to have the physical product.
You want that tangible thing.
Yeah. I want the booklet. I want the photos. Yeah. I want, and I'm not a big vinyl guy yet, but I was gifted through one of my clients, like a top of the line record player, phonograph, whatever you want to call it. And I had a few LPs from like back in the day, some Kiss ones, like double platinum, things like that. Right. And I wanted to see what they sounded like. And I like them, but I'm more of a guy now that like I'm becoming a little bit of a addicted to the fact that now I want the albums redone, remastered on the newest vinyl. I want to hear them in that way. And I don't have a big collection by any means yet, but again, physical product, they're reproducing it and adding things to it. You're hearing it in not necessarily, I love hearing it the old way, but like in its best possible way with the best vinyl, some remastering, not all remastering is good, but it's just, to me, those are the two things. The physical product, I still want that physical product, and I want to see it in my collection, and I want to show people my collection. But
that's what I miss.
But we again, like just think of like those first albums and stuff. Van Halen, Queen, Aerosmith, the stuff I just keep saying, but and things that they were trying and doing that nobody's ever going to hear for the first time. You know what I mean?
Because everything's kind of been done before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. I am so on the fence with vinyl, and let me tell you why. Because I love the modern convenience I just love it to be able to grab what I dig on demand.
Boom, yep.
And it's clean, it's effortless, and there's no, I think because I experienced all that tangible stuff growing up, I don't feel compelled to experience it again.
Right. And that makes perfect sense. And
but it would be cool to take some of those vinyls I have and get it at the turntable and do all that, but it's just a lot of work. You know what I mean? I'm just not inclined to do it. The other thing, too, is it's a little disingenuous now, I think, David, with the vinyl that's coming out now, because it's not really the analog experience. They're pressing vinyl now with remastered, oftentimes digitally remastered recordings. So it's a novel. It becomes a novelty then. It's not.
Right.
It's not a true analog audio experience.
Right.
It's kind of like
it is
halfway there.
It is. Well, and I mean that's the thing. I agree. I mean, like, we experienced the real true initial era of it. Mm-hmm. It lasted, pretty successfully into like early 90s. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of went away. So, it's a new generation experiencing it and liking it, but it's also a nostalgia thing.
No doubt.
For people that got away from it, or never got into it.
Got it.
I owned, if I'm lucky, 10 albums when they were actually out for the first time.
That's the age difference between the two of us. When you got it, I'm guessing CDs were just hitting.
Well, no, I had a shitload of cassettes.
Okay.
So I was the cassette guy.
Okay.
And then CDs came along, and then I started transitioning my entire collection into CDs.
The cassettes kind of sucked because they deteriorated quickly. Now, albums would too if they weren't taken care of.
Right.
But
and they were affected. Cassettes in particular were affected by a lot of things.
Warped.
Yeah, heat and abuse, overplay, all that's not cleaning your tape heads.
Oh yeah,
all that shit.
Whoever did that shit in the car, right? Come on.
But CDs, they hold up, and unless they melt in your car, those things hold up.
Ones and zeros.
And if you look, there's supposedly some resurgence of CDs now too.
I'd like to see that.
Somebody like
that's something tangible. It's pretty easy to pop right in.
Correct.
I mean, an album is you got to get a needle and all this shit.
But again, I'm not listening. I'm not physically using CDs a lot. But I still like to have that product. And I mean, part of it is still supporting the artist.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
And I listen to a lot of guys that aren't on big labels anymore, and that's how they're surviving.
Plus, I think the fans got robbed to a degree of like the tangible stuff and like the liner notes and lyrics and just all the goodies inside. I mean, oh man, I was so wacky when it came to like, I went through a period of time finding Rush. I don't think that's not your band, right? You're not a Rush fan.
Love them and respect them.
Yeah,
I just never became a big fan.
But there was so much limited information on that band in the 70s, in the States here especially.
Right. So are they one of the ones you're talking about?
Yeah. So all I would do is like I would read everything on that record sleeve. I would know like this name is Skip Glidersleeve was their tour manager forever. And I knew that name because I would read and memorize those. I wanted everything I could possibly get my hands on. There was something beautiful.
That's how I was with Kiss. That was me with Kiss.
Yeah, I did that to some degree with them too. Yeah, but there was a lot more with because they were on magazine covers.
They were everywhere.
Get more stuff.
Right.
But Rush was this weird, like you were in a little club if you dug them.
Right.
And it was really hard to get information on them.
Right. Am I right in saying their very first show was in Pittsburgh?
I think so.
Their very first U.S. show.
They opened for
in '74 at the arena, right?
Uriah Heep or some shit. Yeah.
That's what I thought. I wasn't sure. I mean, believe me, I know a lot more about them musically than I ever have.
Yeah.
And I mean, everything you hear is just insane. We all know that. But I just, at the time, and even well past them, really, I just didn't listen to them enough. And I missed the whole, I mean, we talked about this, I think, the first time. I missed, with the exception of people that made it to pop radio, like Van Halen and Queen and a couple people, I missed like the rock thing. All my friends were the jean jacket patches, all that shit. And I was like, you guys are, burnouts and this and that. And then I fucking fall in love with it, but I did so in like the second wave of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I feel like a loser for that reason. I really do. But but I went back
Uh-huh.
and got it and appreciated it and loved it.
So I'll share this with you. It's really funny kind of thing. My best friend in the world, Jim Stewart, who's very private and like this, just a
Not Jimmy Stewart.
yeah, not that one. No. Spelling's different too.
And your friend's alive.
And he's alive and kicking and doing great.
Good.
He does no social media. Very private, very accomplished business executive.
Smart
here.
guy.
And he but probably the best guitar player I have ever known in my circles. I mean, he should have been on
This guy?
He should be on a national stage somewhere.
Wow.
He's that. He's that in the bag
Wow.
of chips. Yeah. But you would never know it to talk to him.
Right.
Like you put him in front of a Les Paul and a Marshall, and like you'll just sit there and you're like, Anyways,
Wow.
but I made this comment to him. I said, when I put Rush on, whether I'm out for my walks at night or I'm in the car or whatever, there's something intrinsically beautiful with that stuff, especially up until like the mid 80s Rush. I like some of the other stuff, but the stuff from the 70s, again, I'm not saying it's mass appeal, and I can understand why a lot of people don't get it. But there's something intrinsically beautiful when I hear that in the way it makes me feel. It's that perfect thing about music, emotions. It's like that. That is my thing.
Yep.
Love Kiss equally as well. They've been good to me for my career, and Stanley's been a friend. But that Rush thing is different. It's like, because it was a little club I belonged to, and I found them absolutely 100% on my own. No one really. Someone brought 2112 into my house, and I found and dove into that intrinsically, and I just made it part of my persona.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it to me.
It's so wonderful. Like I can get in my car and drive to an appointment that's 30 minutes away, and I can put like All the World's a Stage on, which is raw 70s analog recorded live, and it's just like any other person within my car was like, okay, do we have to listen to this? But to me, it's the fucking
Yes, we
this is
do.
the live version of Bite Torn the Snow Dog. Suck it. It's the greatest thing in history, man. Yeah. And the joke was, my buddy said, because you probably had a rough time dating as a kid. I said, well, I remember this one exchange where this girl said to me, and I quote you, man, I'll never forget it. And I was attracted to her, and she goes, I just love Blondie. I got to Call Me. I listened to Call Me. I just love Blondie. What's your favorite song? And I said, Bite Torn the Snow Dog, live version. And she went, oh.
Did she even know what that, did she? I don't think so. I'm like, she didn't know what that was.
But I was being honest.
Yeah.
I was being just as honest as she was. But and I couldn't understand why she didn't know what this was. It was the baddest thing on the planet. But there was such a disconnect between like what was hip and mainstream as opposed to what I felt was what resonated to me.
Right.
And nothing's changed. I'm 56. I'm driving down, and that music still makes me feel as incredible as it did then.
Well, and like and I think everybody has that. I mean,
I would hope.
I want to jump back to this, but like I think of like older folks, senior citizens, that kind of stuff, who even folks dealing with like Alzheimer's, dementia and stuff, they like you hit them with music from their period,
Benny
like
Goodman.
from like your period, what we're talking about, and it's like it brings them back to life. And I mean, that's how powerful it is, and that takes you. It's a time machine too. Like we've said that a million times. Bobby used that in a song of his, and he phrased it perfectly. But it takes you back to a time when you treasured life, like not that you don't treasure it now, but where it was just
different.
Yeah, it was, and
simpler for me.
Correct, and I mean, my time frame, and I used to compare a couple folks that I know in a similar way, not musically, but in a similar way. But when I lost my leg in 1989, and think about 1989 and think about music, I was a late bloomer to like rock and hard rock, with the exception of Kiss. I was 6 when I fell in love with Kiss, and I got away from Kiss like early 80s.
Like most of us did, yeah.
And I went to pop at that point pretty big time.
Yeah,
and like
Prince
took over my life and that kind of stuff.
Rick James.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. But Billy Joel, I mean, all that stuff. But I was kind of coming back to it, and I was well back into it at that point. I mean, a couple years easily into it, 3 or 4. But like I lost my leg around that time, and that music at that time pulled me through
Damn straight.
some of the darkest stuff ever.
Yep.
And I what's the word I want to use? I tie myself to that time frame as to like what made me.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
100%. 100%.
And some of it was pretty cheesy. But again, it evolved into things that nobody like gave a chance to after a certain point in time. And that's the shit that I know, like your Bytor and Snow Dog. I mean, like I rattle off tunes and bands. Like, who the fuck is that? I'm like, dude, if you'd give them a listen, you would fall in love with them.
But it doesn't matter if anybody else doesn't get it. And
Right. I don't care.
That's a beautiful thing. I'm just like, but like last night. So I'm very regimented about few things in my life, but my evening, my late night walks and my exercise is something it's just part of my being now. But so I'm out last night with my weight vest on and I'm moving, you know, and I'm just like listening to All the World Is Stage probably for the billionth time in my life. And you always hear something a little new and a little different. And I got to that one part, I'm like, I said, it doesn't get any better than this. This guitar riff that lasted like how many bars? That's like audible orgasm to me, you know? Like, it's the fucking greatest thing in the world. I can't articulate that and get anyone else to understand it. But I would wish that kind of musical joy on everybody.
I agree. I mean,
and I don't think everybody gets that kind of musical joy.
Oh, no, definitely not.
From their music.
Oh, okay. You're probably right about that. I was going thinking more the route that, you know, people that just don't incorporate music into their lives.
They're
at
out
all.
there.
Oh, I know way too many of them.
They're
you know
out
what I mean?
there.
But they, I just totally lost my train of thought. But you had me thinking something a while ago that I wanted to. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if we ever talked about it, but where do you know about Dream Theater?
Very much so.
And where do you put them in comparison to Rush?
I think that was the next evolution of Rush.
That's I would agree with you.
But on steroids almost, not from
different. Almost a different genre.
Okay, so my thought would be the vocals are probably more mainstreamish in Dream Theater.
Right.
I love Alex Lifeson, but the guitar player Petrucci buries Alex Lifeson. You know, so that's the next generation.
Yeah, and totally different though.
But it's I think in terms of technique and creativity, kind of has an edge over Lifeson. I think there, in terms of just looking at it almost mechanically, but drummer, whether it was Mangini, the more recent drummer, or who was the Portnoy before him, you know, again, I'm not a drummer, so I can't sit and give you the critique mechanically, but my gut tells me that those two aren't in the same league as Neil.
Yeah, and they'll tell you that.
Yeah, I just don't, you know, for me personally, but I think that was the next thing, because they definitely pulled a lot from Rush.
Oh, yeah.
Not everything, but they pulled a lot.
Right.
A little tinge toward more mainstream vibes at times.
Yeah, I mean, they focused on melody, really, like, super important.
But they're real tight, and it's real polished.
Yeah.
Because of the times,
right.
I think. But just this fantastic band. Freddie was out with them for a couple of years.
Freddie
Koala. He did bass teching for their bass. John Mayung.
Oh, John Mayung. Yep.
Yeah, he's something.
He is.
I mean,
there's not one.
It's just
every member of the band is ridiculous. And
I like. If my long round answer is, I think that's the next progression of Rush. I think Rush would have told you that.
Yeah.
I think Peart would have probably told you that too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure at one point, while Neil was alive, that Portnoy was the only person they'd ever think about putting with them if he wasn't in the band.
I would listen. And Neil's like an intrinsic. I was a drummer before I was ever a guitar player, and I used to sit on my bed with I would get notepads, and each notepad would have a different thickness to it.
To get
and
a
I'd
different
play the
sound.
drums, and I would play like Fly By Night and 2112 and all these, and I would play this because that was just how I absorbed the music. But that being said, I loved Neil Peart ridiculously, just ridiculous. But that being said, I'm so anxious for it to continue that I would love to see Lifeson and Peart. I'm sorry, Lifeson and Lee grab Portnoy and just go at it, or Mangini, or somebody of high caliber,
right?
And just go.
They reproduce the show, yeah,
and just do it, man. You know, I mean, fuck the critics. I don't, you know, or the purists. I would love to see Lifeson and Lee go sing the classics again. These guys like to do that shit.
As long as they're on board, I mean, mentally on board, it'd be
They
phenomenal.
would be. Have you seen the most recent interview with them? They actually gave Strombo an interview like a couple of months ago, and they both seem like they're in a good place now. Something's going to happen. I don't know what it's going to be, what they're going to call it. I don't think they'll ever call it Rush, but something is going to happen.
I hope Portnoy. I mean, that'd be great. I mean, and there are probably
someone of that caliber.
Yeah, I was gonna say there are probably people out there we never heard of that they could just.
Not many.
But I'm saying we've never heard of. Like maybe they have tapped into somebody.
Yeah, have you seen YouTube recently? Some kid in Indonesia is playing that stuff with one arm.
Yeah,
I mean, like ridiculous.
It is.
But I'll tell you what's interesting is when you see those YouTube videos, you usually see them with incredible musical, instrument skills, drumming, guitar, but you rarely ever see them vocally, not at the same level.
Agreed.
Right?
It's funny you say that. Because I've been putting together, I've been saying this forever, but I've since the pandemic began, I've been like cobbling a little rig together because what I notice is I watch a billion of those videos because I just appreciate musicianship. Everything, drums, guitar, everything.
Yeah.
But there are very few that, not necessarily, I don't know that I would say of the ones I've seen of the quality, but like I just don't see a ton of people singing in comparison to like the people that are doing the instrumental stuff.
Why is that?
Well, number one, it's probably hard to do if they want to do it to their best of their ability, but like I don't see enough of it. So I've been saying, and I have all these private recordings on YouTube and such like that of me doing things, but I'm too much of a perfectionist where I'm not going to do it or release it until it's done. But I've cobbled this rig together to do kind of what I want to do, and it's not different in the sense that people will have a backing track, a guitarist will have a backing track and play over that backing track.
Of course.
Where I'm going to be doing the same thing, but I want to do it. It's not going to be pre-recorded. It's going to be singing live to it from start to finish, and either sucking or not sucking, or somewhere in between.
Do it. Put it out there. Kill them with content.
I keep putting it off, and I don't know why, but I just keep doing it because I want it to be perfect, but I know it's never going to be.
You got to get past that shit.
Yeah.
So then you'll never do anything.
Right, and that's kind of what I've not done for the past 2 years.
Yeah, I mean,
I've told you about a rock and metal podcast that hasn't happened yet, but it's a little closer to happening.
No, but perfection is not like I don't know. That's one thing I have no problem with. I know that a lot of the shit I do is going to suck initially until I've refined it. I have no problem putting garbage out there if I'm just starting out because
you don't. But
but I'm saying I know it's not going to be perfect, and I just But again, that's just the way I'm wired. I'll if I believe in it, the idea is solid, I'll try it. And if I find out it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I mean, you're an accomplished singer. I wouldn't worry about you're not going to put garbage out there. It might not be to your hope that it's of a certain level, but all of it will be certainly listenable at its worst. So I'd kill them with content.
I hope so. And and that's the point. And I mean, like the few times I've just randomly done it in my car, you know what I mean? The response I got was, it was just too good, better than I expected. And I did nothing around it. I'd start the video, a song would already be playing. I'd sing 30 seconds of it and stop it. Whereas my idea, again, is to make it the whole way through a song. And maybe that's too much. That might be too much for people's attention spans too, but
I don't believe that.
But my point of it is to do songs that totally come from my heart. Number one, so you're gonna hopefully feel that, and talk about them either before or after, what they meant to me, what they might mean to you.
Yeah,
something that they don't know about it.
Do that.
I don't know. I'm going to.
I would just throw caution to the wind. Just what's the worst that can happen? You're going to be your harshest critic.
Correct. And I mean, I don't give two shits about...
And let me tell you something. You're hearing this from me. I am your friend. I am telling you, fuck the... I'll say it again. Fuck the misnomer that no one has any attention span. Because podcasting and my playthrough rates prove to me that people are buying into long-form conversations. So if you're telling me they're not going to buy into like a 5-minute essay or musical essay,
I understand.
You're crazy.
Well,
if they dig it,
I hope I am.
they're definitely going to do it. Yeah, I mean, I give humans more credit than I think a lot of people do. I don't believe we're in a 10-second. You talk to ad people because real estate. I run ads. You got to catch them in the first 5 seconds. Well, maybe for a specific commercial thing, maybe there's some validity to that. But if people are ingesting stuff for their own leisure, they're out searching for things they identify with.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
They're willing, I think, to put a little more time into things like that.
And my hope is, again, if it's a good enough song, and it's going to be, there might be original material mixed in here and there, but I have to have it completed in order to do that. But, hopefully it's going to be a song that touches you or you already know, right. Or it's a young person listening to it who, look at all the young folks now. And I mean, we've been saying this for, everybody says it throughout generations, but it's so available now. But it warms my heart to see these young folks now like grabbing the rock stuff.
Did you read my social media post from today? Did you happen to see it?
Today, no, I did not. I went
to a drive-through. I don't eat at drive-thrus. I was getting a drink, but I went through a drive-thru.
Sure,
today.
you were.
I don't eat that fast food shit. But I had Bite Door and the Snow Dog on, live version, and I'm coming through, and I get to the thing, and this kid is like, he starts going nuts.
He knew it,
and he's early mid-20s, if that.
That's beautiful.
And I'm like, dude, you dig it? He goes, Bite Door and the Snow Dog. Fuck yeah! And he's like,
beautiful.
He goes, it's like he lost his shit. I felt so happy, and I got like, this is unbelievable. This kid got it. Like I was a first.
And that, I mean, those are the things.
He's playing air drums. I'm like, this is nuts.
Yeah.
At the window with the headset on.
And I mean, that's what I mean. And to watch the guitarists in particular, I will say the younger guitarists that are, number one, just taken by all the good stuff and the quality players that exist and have existed. But like to have the technical ability that they have at the age that they have these days is blowing my mind. And they're learning so much of it friggin' like themselves off of YouTube and shit like that.
It's crazy.
It is. And I mean, and some of them are just copycats where they're just learning songs. They're not learning technique or theory or any of that. And that bugs me a little bit, but just the fact that they can pick it up and do it blows my mind.
Well, what picks me up, they can pick it up and do it, and then they sometimes look disinterested. They're doing it so well,
correct,
and so incredible, and still kind of even getting some of the inflections of the. I mean, it's like
exactly
almost remedially they were doing it.
That's what I'm saying, and that's scary. Whereas
what's crazier?
What
you take a heavy metal song, like even a death metal song, right? That you and I really wouldn't even know,
right?
But there's this incredibly hot, good-looking woman
playing it
from some other country that's just going at it. I'm like, and I'm thinking that's got to be a deep fake. I'm trying to look for, is she really playing it? And she's playing, like note for note.
And I will say,
like, how does that work?
And I will say, I mean,
7 million views.
Yeah. And I will say, I'm definitely taken by a pretty face. I'm not gonna lie.
Of course.
But to see like a young girl,
it's not just the face.
Right, to see a young girl have that ability, it makes me so happy.
Yeah.
And again, they're maybe not the death metal stuff, but they're carrying on great songs that, 20 years ago when social media didn't exist, it wasn't happening. A ton
of practice had to go in to get to that
There's
level.
no doubt.
Even if you are a savant, there's a lot of practice.
There's no doubt.
That, right?
No doubt.
I mean, shit, I look at that stuff and I'm like, man, I remember it took me like a while to get over to go to A, to go to G, C, G.
It still does for me.
Yeah, like C, D, G. C, D, G, man. When I figured that out on an acoustic in the open voicings, I was like a big thing.
Yep.
I'm like, wow.
Yep.
And they're just like.
These are they're just tearing up leads and chunking out stuff, and it's amazing.
Are you familiar with, he became like a thing probably in the late 2000s, early 2010s, Ola England.
I want to say it sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's a shredder. He's been in a bunch of bands, like heavy metal bands. Done really well.
Why don't I know this?
He became a YouTube star. He got his own channel, his own studio, and I think during the pandemic, especially, he started designing his own guitars along with, I don't know if it's Schecter or somebody. Just a really And he went on this mission to acquire all these Dimebag Darrow guitars, which in turn he ended up with some Boogie Street stuff. And I'm watching it one day, and he ended up he had one of these shirts on, these ones, but in brown,
nice,
with like the tan writing. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I reach out to him, and here the gentleman he acquired the Dimebag guitar had our shirts in the case.
Nice.
And he's wearing them on his video. So I started some conversation with him too, and we're going to connect again. But it was like, this goes to show you, man, it's a small world.
It is. I was just going to say that.
It's a small world.
It's amazing. It is amazing.
I mean, I don't know. I think ultimately I have hope that whether it's going to be the reintroduction of vinyl, or I think that we're going to get saturated at some point with just too much electric music, and maybe the organic nature of strings, and that's going to eventually come back.
Right.
But things go, they're cyclical,
it is,
right?
Yep, I was going to say the cycle. It just seems that there was music, really hasn't been around. Popular music really hasn't been around that long.
No, hell no.
But there was a time where people were saying like it's a 20 to 30 year cycle. I've heard that repeatedly.
A 20-year cycle, I've heard.
Yeah, and I've heard 30, but I mean, I honestly think these days, because of so much available and people, like, you look at
We're
people.
distracted.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at people, even particularly young people's playlists in general, and they're all over the place.
It's
whereas
great, though.
it is great. Whereas, like, I can't say that when I was that age.
No, none of us could. We were very genre specific.
Correct. It was pop rock, pop hard rock. I mean, it didn't go beyond that much.
Yeah. You could blend a little bit. But,
and there wasn't as much available either. Like, I don't know that some of these genres really existed, or maybe they did, but they were just kind of so small.
I don't think when we were younger that record companies really were interested in trying to find ways to bridge additional genres with us. They wanted to find us, find out what our niche was, and then cater to us right there.
I agree.
And we just fell like cattle into the trough,
I agree. But I was like, for that reason, because it's so varied, those cycles, I think, are bigger. They're longer. They take longer.
Oh, interesting.
See what I'm saying? Like, there's just so much to listen to that. I mean, I just see it so much though. Like the rock, like the young kids digging the rock stuff and playing along with the rock stuff. That I'm like, please come back to me. I just want to see a resurgence of it. Like. Maybe I shouldn't care, but like on the charts and such. You look at charts, rock doesn't exist on the charts.
No. And why?
Nothing close.
And why?
Because rap, hip hop, the pop that is pop today, it's not the pop that I know and love that much. That's what it's just taken it over.
So I will definitely say that I'm not a fan of rap in general. The rap that I had found to be fun was generally early 80s.
Yeah.
When rap got incorporated with hip hop, the hip hop thing was lost on me. I never, it just nothing I grew up with. I didn't dig it.
Right.
And then gangster rap came along, and I found that some of the beats that were pretty impressive, like what Dr. Dre was doing, all that. But I didn't like the message because it was violent, and it was misogynist. That didn't do anything for me. But since then, I have not paid attention to rap at all. It hasn't done, and I've tried once in a while.
I've not.
I want to see like, this is a hit song, and then Eminem had a song like in '99, 2000. I'm like, that's a catchy song. We can't see me putting that on. But if it came on the radio, I wouldn't turn it off. So once in a while, I'll see nuggets of stuff.
Right.
But it's a genre that is not. I just don't swim in that genre. Right. And I think that the reason why pop music today does not resonate with me, David, is because that I think rap dominates, or rap influence dominates pop music, and has for a decade or so.
Yeah, I agree.
So it isn't that I'm intentionally shunning it; it just doesn't appeal to me.
Right, and it's too, like, I mean, I'm sure you've noticed that everything is a collaboration with like 2, 3, 4 artists at one time, where again they're trying to blend all that and pull in as many people.
Lack of creativity.
There's that too, and again repeating the past.
The sampling stuff was.
I was just going to say,
always
sucking in samples,
but in a way, it was a kind of an
homage. You're going to say.
I don't know how I feel about that. I used to be so anti-sampling, and then I looked at it in context, thinking, well, maybe that was part of what the whole thing was. Because you go back to like Rapper's Delight and Curtis Blow and all those, they were really oversampling popular songs then too. So it wasn't like that was something that rap evolved to. It was always there.
Yep.
So maybe that's part of the whole thing. So I kind of like have come full circle on that. But I just I used to criticize rap because I didn't call it music. I called it, well, it's not original. And then I had to step back from it and saying, yeah, maybe it really isn't music the way I know it. Maybe it's another expression. Maybe it's art.
Right.
Maybe it's art that like takes elements of music but creates this new thing.
Right, like rhythm and things like that.
So maybe it's not really fair to criticize it when I'm comparing it to Led Zeppelin because, they're two different things.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense? And that's where I think I came to some but my point is because popular music for the longest time has been so, and tainted is the wrong word, but there's just so much influence of rap in pop music that I think that's why my brain just turns it off.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I compare today's pop music. I mean, I guess I compare it's today's country and pop. I compare them to each other in the sense that you have to weed through it to find like actual good stuff, but I think you have to weed through pop a lot more,
no doubt,
to find something of quality.
Yeah.
Country, it's not as hard to find that good quality, genuine, I hate to say it, but what country in my mind is supposed to be.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more of it there. And I mean, there's better storytelling and things like that in general. It's so replicated. It's ridiculous.
Well, you're coming at it from the vocalist standpoint, and I'm coming at it from probably the
musical
standpoint. So to me, when you started incorporating electric beats, whether they're electric drums or just electric ancillary beats on top of analog drums, but when you do electrical percussion in country, you lost me immediately.
Yep.
And then when you then add in some synthesizers, as a focal point in the song, you really lost me because how could that possibly be country music?
Yeah, I mean it's
that's pop.
Exactly, and that's what it's become. And it's just whether it's right to define it this way or not. Country. I want to say was meant to be, but it's just known as the most organic.
Bingo.
Music that has existed. And I mean, think of all the instrumentation that identifies with it, or at least 100%, used to. 100%. Banjo, steel guitar, fiddle, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Keep going on. And I mean, yeah, you add the moment that the dance beats came in, or at least the artificial drums, I'm like, what are they doing? Yeah. All the people are rolling over in their graves going, what are you doing to my genre? You know what I mean?
It was funny, like when Poverty Neck was big in the 2000s, it wasn't really my cup of tea, but I understood how cool it was that people were resonating because you had a fiddle in there and you just had more traditional instruments.
Right.
And it was powerful and they put it together as polished, but it was really, quote unquote, pretty organic.
It was. And it had that punch to it. And, like, Garth Brooks to me is the first guy that I ever
Country Kiss.
Yeah, and how he loves Kiss too. But he knew what he was doing when he came out of the box, and that was that was 1990-ish.
Early 90s, yeah.
And that's the first person like I heard somewhere and I perked up. I'm like, okay. I kind of get what he's doing. Maybe not Friends in Low Places, because that might have been the first thing I heard. And I'm like, oh boy, this is crap.
Every bar played that out.
But I like it today. I didn't like it then.
Yeah.
But things I heard after that, I'm like, okay. And then you saw him live. His live versions killed his studio versions, but he had that punch. And 90s country bands kind of took that lead for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then to me, it evolved even further in the early 2000s, and it became more of a true rock thing.
I think you're right.
And that's what Poverty Neck took a hold of, and we weren't too far behind that.
Not at all.
So,
no,
in my mind, they were still trying to grab that 90s-ish country punch thing, where we're like, fuck that, we're doing the solid rock thing.
Yeah. It was different. You guys were different
because our shows were just total. If you compared our set lists,
I think that's what ultimately broke them up. I think I don't know. I've had Abby and Junior on multiple times, so I don't know the entire backstory. There's a lot to it, and a lot doesn't matter. But I think that you had a faction in there that wanted to be more mainstream rock style, and you had a traditionalist
right
with the other side.
I agree
think
with you.
that's what kind of tore somewhat. I think
I agree with
apart.
you. I agree with you. Yep.
So I always wondered what Gene and Paul thought the first time they either heard it on the air or they got a taste of Garth Brooks' live show in like 94, 95. They had to have been like, what the fuck?
Well, and then to find out he's a huge Kiss fan on top of it.
And I think they played a song on you can go back on YouTube and you'll see that they played Hard Luck Woman on the Leno show or something.
Well, there was a tribute album called Kiss My Ass,
yeah.
and he recorded Hard Luck Woman.
They did that song
together,
live.
you're saying?
Yeah, on it was either Leno or Letterman.
I want to say I do remember that.
Yeah, and it was but just to see that when you're an influencer, you do these shows that are punchy and powerful and bombastic, and there's a country guy who made a smooth transition to that because it was so choreographed. It freaking worked.
And he is a genius, and he was a genius. And I mean, if you think about like him even admitting that he liked Kiss during that time,
smart though.
But that took some balls.
Sure, because they were at one of their lowest points at that time.
And like I give him credit for that because he's like I love what I love, and this is why I do what I do and do it the way I do it.
Well, the argument can be made. Yeah, the planets all lined up in '96 when Kiss got back together, but I think it was their last attempt because I think they were running on fumes at that point.
Yep.
But I think Garth Brooks' popularity of that live show, I think we Americans wanted to be entertained again.
Yep.
And I think Garth was a part of that because his shows were way bigger than any rock show because grunge was going on at that time, right?
Yep.
And the music we love coming out of the 80s and the 90s was kind of failing.
Yep.
But people wanted to be entertained in a big way.
Yep.
And had Garth not hit like that, there might not have been an appetite for a Kiss reunion.
You're right. And a lot of people jumped to country during that time because of that. I mean, listeners. And a lot of musicians jumped to that during that time because they're like, fuck, I'm not doing this depressing bullshit. You know what I mean?
100%.
And then it evolved. It got, 90s country did get really cheesy in a lot of ways, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And it was trying to incorporate like a classic thing with just a cheeseball thing. I don't know how to explain it. But then to me, it began to evolve at the end of the 90s into the 2000s.
Yeah.
And that's when, somebody played Keith Urban for me. And I'm like, holy shit, this is actually really good. And this, to me, wasn't a country song.
Yeah.
It was a rock/pop song.
Yeah.
That was just redone in a different way.
And those guys, there was a couple guys that seemed to figure it out. Like Keith Urban was one. Chesney definitely
figured
one.
It out.
They figured out the image. They figured out the hooks in the songs.
And again, that's when, well, I don't know if that's when it happened, but that's when they were starting, like Keith Urban, Chesney, them, even though Chesney was weird because he doesn't play any instruments. His voice doesn't really cater to a rock vocal, but they were starting
a different thing.
They were starting to identify with rock acts and using them in their song, mentioning them in their songs. Keith would he'd pull out an Eagles tune or he'd pull out something a little bit
smart.
Edged where like Eagles probably wasn't a good example, but somebody that was more of a rock guy and even guitar riffs he'd be doing or leads he'd be playing, he'd be stealing from that stuff, and people like me, I'd hear and go, holy shit, he just did that, and I wouldn't have given him a second glance if I wouldn't have heard that.
It's just smart.
It was.
It's just smart. Just positioning themselves and
I think you're right, though. That thirst was coming back for it.
I think so. Yeah, because at that point, the '96 Kiss reunion tour hit for a lot of reasons. I think Garth Brooks' popularity of live acts especially helped them usher them back. But the public was tired of grunge, tired of being depressed. There wasn't really a lot to be depressed about in the country. We were in pretty good straits.
Which is
were generally
strangest thing ever to me.
Pretty good. Then in the 90s, up until like 2001, from 94 on, from 94 to 2001, we were curing diseases. We weren't involved in really any conflicts of any consequence. Right. Times were good.
But everybody in rock was angry and sad and depressed and blah, 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 blah. But
it kind of faded away there, right?
It did, thankfully.
I think, they never get credit for this, but I think the 96 Kiss reunion tour was partially responsible for putting the nail the final nail in grunge. It doesn't mean that those bands didn't continue.
Oh yeah.
But
Right.
they really embraced pure rock and roll roots from that point.
Agreed.
They commercially dropped the grunge. Now, and maybe to their credit, that was put on them by the record companies.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we may have talked about that earlier, but I mean, you know how bitter I am about that time, and how it destroyed a lot of bands.
Sure did.
But it also gave a lot of bands resolve that continued on and survived to this day because of that. But if you read about it like I did, like in a probably bad way, like MTV, for example, had a known change of agenda. They decided these guys are done. This is the new thing. And I mean, imagine like, it hurts me to think about it. I can't think of that happening in any other time.
No.
And chopping somebody's career off at the knees.
Was so
we're
unnecessary.
never going to play your videos again, so don't waste your time.
It was so unnecessary because the thing was they always did have that 120 minutes thing all through the 80s. They had a position for alternative. They could have expanded the role of 120.
Everybody had a space.
Yeah, they couldn't. And if they wanted to expand that role of 120 minutes, they could have found new ways to do that.
Correct. Why take it away completely?
Yeah, which you would have seen some rock. Maybe that grunge sound would have incorporated there. They didn't need a new demographic.
Yeah, like Headbangers Ball completely went away.
100%.
All that shit went away. And I mean, whether you liked it or not, again, it wasn't somebody's right to just take it away.
It was an executive, I'm sure. If you go historically, I'm sure there was an executive there.
And then you add a band or two in there. And I'm not saying, like, again, I have a lot of respect now for some of the music and the grunge that I fucking hated at the time.
Yeah.
But, like, I got to pin Nirvana in there where I think they were made the representative to destroy, like, the other party fun rock. Like, and I think
100%.
they took it on. They wore that badge on, and the thing is, like, we may have talked about this too, but like, I hate the fact that Dave Grohl was in Nirvana because I fucking love Dave Grohl and everything about him.
Yeah, me too.
And he was like
different role though.
Yeah. I mean, he was meant to be, he did what he was supposed to do in Nirvana. He never, if you watch things from the past 20 years, he speaks respectfully of it, but he also speaks like, hey man, I was just there to play the drums. I did what I was told, and that was that. And like, where'd
the bass player go? You never hear that guy. You're like, what the fuck is he doing?
He just kind of, I don't know if he just resurfaced, because again, I never
was there 3 or 4 in that band?
At the very end, there was the guitarist who is in Foo Fighters.
Okay.
Damn, I'm totally forgetting his name.
Okay.
But he became the second guitarist in...
so initially they were a trio.
Correct. And what the hell's his name? I should know his name.
It's okay.
But yeah, near the end, he became the second guitarist in Nirvana, so they were a 4-piece for a period of time. I just don't remember what the period of time was. But I forget what the hell I was saying. But I just think, like, I hate thinking of Grohl as being in that band. Like, I don't want him to have been in that band. But
I'm kind of the same way.
But knowing his role in it, like, I'm okay with it. Because he was like the 5th or it might have been more than that. He might have said he was like the 10th drummer from the very beginning of Nirvana until he joined to fit in and like when they hit. That he became part of it when they hit.
I remember waiting outside of a restaurant for somebody in like 91, I think it was. It was early, like 5 in the morning or something. And there was a show on DV called Rockline. And they were featuring this, Nirvana thing because they had just started to explode. And, and they started playing like tracks of this shit. And I'm like, this is fucking garbage. And this guy's mumbling and whining and complaining, and then I heard some live tracks of them. The guitars weren't in tune, and to a part of me was like, well, I kind of seen this all before. This is just like the Pistols, right? But to me, at least, the Pistols were in tune, and I mean, they were
probably genuine.
There's no because that just evolved, right? This was crafted.
Yeah, I would say it was contrived.
Contrived. Yeah, that's the word. And I remember saying to myself, "Man, I hope this doesn't catch on." It was just like, holy shit.
And again, like I wouldn't have cared if it would have exploded like it did, but everybody else still had their lanes.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't the case.
I'll also tell you something else too. The metal fans are going to hate me for saying this. I know that Dimebag is in Pantera was beloved.
Yep.
But I have to tell you, they weren't. I don't think for a second that band was contrived or created. I think that they were doing what they loved, but they were given an audience by MTV and I think that was intentional because that's where they sent
again another agenda.
That's where they sent heavy metal.
Yep.
You see, they sent heavy metal to a dark place.
They did.
And they mainstreamed that, and then other bands like formed around that. And that's what mosh pits came around. And they tried to capitalize on what they thought was an angry society. And let's feature these bands and get the crowds all in a hate mode.
Yep.
And in my opinion, I think there was executives that kind of orchestrated this shit. Not that Pantera would have been any different, but they may not have had that commercial success.
Well, and Pantera was a glam band at first.
Before, I mean,
they had the hair, they had the look.
And Cowboys to Hell was not a heavy act. But before Cowboys to Hell, their first one, their EP or whatever was very... Yeah.
But it's, again, I just wonder if... I mean, I don't know if this has ever been documented, but you wonder with them if they just said... like either fuck this, we're not succeeding. Yeah. We need to take a different route.
100%.
And if that's the case, hey, I give them I give them total credit for that. But you can also look at it the other side. Is it a thing where their label went, look, you guys suck, or it isn't working for you in this vein?
Go angry.
We need to go this way. This is where we're taking you.
Because they were Nirvana. The angst. It was an angst-driven thing.
Yep.
Nirvana was expressing their angst in this type of music.
Yep.
And Pantera, but it happened at the same fucking time.
Yeah.
Because Cowboys to Hell was a good heavy rock record coming at the end of the 80s, but then that next one went really dark and then that created a different kind of heavy metal fan.
Yeah.
Then you had Manson and some of this other stuff that came after that was just exacerbating the dark.
Yeah, they were just trying to push it to the next level. On purpose,
and funny how Slayer, which had been around for so long, but really underground for the most part,
for sure.
All of a sudden, that they surfaced in a big way, all of a sudden they're popular now in a big way.
Yep.
See, so you have to look at the record companies. To ignore the fact that the record companies didn't have a big say in what was going on is crazy.
No doubt, and I mean that they were probably given an option and said, you're either doing this or you're done. We're not supporting you, we're not backing you anymore. And I mean, for the lesser acts, like a lot of the guys that I love that never really broke into the big thing, they had to go back to like smaller labels than they were already on, like the bigger ones.
Absolutely.
And at that point, they're like, okay, fuck, what do we do? And they had a lot of freedom, but they're like, if we keep doing what we're doing, we're shunned right now.
There's
we're
no
not
audience for it.
Right. And nobody's going to give us a chance. So a lot of them put like one album out that went that direction. It sucked. It was so contrived and so not them that it didn't carry through. And they're like, okay, we're going back to what we love. And it took forever, but they climbed out of a lot of them climbed out of their holes and survived and still do on touring and, releasing material when they can.
What about what Kiss did with Carnival of Souls? Remember that record?
I do.
I got that record as a massive Kiss fan after coming off of Revenge in '92, which was pretty good.
Oh, dude.
It was darker than I thought it would be.
And I love that album. Stands out to me as one of their best.
As a rock and they found their balls again.
Yep, exactly.
But the next one went really dark.
Yep.
And I started playing these tracks and I'm like, Paul Stanley shouldn't be singing dark, like moany kind of like miserable lyrics, right?
Yep.
It's just everybody was tuned down a whole step or 1.5 steps, and they were lost. And the band members even tell you they were lost. Now there's some little moments in that thing that, like, as a guitar player, I dig, but it wasn't a great record,
right? And I mean, they have to have been put in a position because I mean, to me, that was their second like kind of downturn in their careers,
no question.
So. again, is the label involved going, look, guys, you got to come up with something different than what you've been doing, and this is where things are right now, so see what you can do.
And Revenge made gold, but it wasn't a success. That Revenge tour was bad, so that was, even though it didn't sound like 80s metal, it got pigeonholed as being a leftover from 80s metal.
Yeah, but I mean, the album as a whole, like the songs they released, which they were fairly brave to do.
Domino.
What was the first one? Unholy.
Unholy, yeah.
Was their first single.
Pretty freaking dark.
Yeah, that comes out of the box. I'm like, I've heard it at first. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And the video had imagery I thought that was just unnecessary.
Yeah, but now I like the song. I didn't like it as much then.
Correct.
But then Domino comes out and it's funny, but it's weird for them. It's dark-ish.
Seeing Gene take something was good because Paul had done all the singles.
But there's a ballad on that album
Every
that's
Time
great.
I Look at You.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's
but the video even was dark. Like there was the whole theme of that record was like
I Just Wanna was the only thing to me, and God Gave Rock and Roll to You, even though they took that up for the soundtrack from whatever.
Yeah. That's an old Argent song, right?
Yeah. But like I Just Wanna is a fun fucking rock song.
It's a titty bar song.
Yeah, and it's a great song. And so it's kind of like that record is split, but they only promoted the darker side of it more than anything.
Exactly. So, right. Yeah, because there's, I think, there's a couple other. It stands on its own as a solid record. It doesn't have the album sales it probably should have. But there's a song on there too. Is it "Look in the Mirror"? Or is that on Carnival of Souls? Take a Look in the Mirror, Stanley tune, and then oh man. There's a line, and I think it's on the Revenge album. The song says I can't prove it, but if you listen,
we can look it up.
If you listen to it closely, there's lyrics in there of it sounds like he had a breakup with that Samantha Fox, that British porn star. And some of the lyrics are, "You taped our sexy conversations and you sold them to the BBC." Oh. And it's in that, the lyrics are in that song. It seems it could be all bullshit, but it seems really personal. Wow. So, I mean, it's just that whole, "Take a Look in the Mirror," I think is the name of the tune. He
either just decided to dig deep on that, or somebody said, "Hey, let's dig deep on something."
But it didn't fit the record. Yeah. There was nothing dark about so you had moments in there that were more mainstream, but the way they sold the record.
Right.
Especially visually.
Right. And even, like, look at the album cover. It's just like, whatchamacallit?
Like metal rivets, steel, and
rivets,
there's like blood rolling down the thing.
So it's just a little more evil, dark kind of thing.
Yeah, and I talked to Bruce Kulick.
Their look, I mean, think about their look. It changed.
Yeah, but thank God they didn't go out and try to tour with that, though.
Right.
That would have really fucked up their legacy. And they tried to... Not mistaken, that didn't get released till after the reunion tour had started. That album came out in '97 after they all were already out.
What, Revenge?
No. The next one, Carnival of Souls.
Okay, yeah.
They weren't going to release that. Once they announced the original band was coming back, they weren't going to release this and confuse the audience.
Right.
But if I remember correctly, too many bootlegs were out.
So they had to do it officially.
And they figured we got to get paid.
Right.
So let's release it.
Right, and that's when things were...
The final sessions, they called it. Yeah, marketing's a son of a bitch, man. Right?
It is.
All you got to do is pay attention.
And if you miss it, you're fucked. It's like, it's such a timing thing.
Especially if you're a fan of the band. I mean, just a lot you can miss if you're not paying attention.
Right.
But things tend to make sense.
But if you are a fan of the band, you really have to, in my like visualization of bands that I love, you really have to do something really wrong in order to lose me. You might have a small period or an album or whatever where you're experimenting, and I'm okay with that. And again, you might find a jewel among that crap, and I'll love that album for that song, just for that reason. And that's because I'm loyal to the people that
you are,
that I know that are true to what they do.
And I am too. But here's the problem: I think a lot of more casual music fans aren't.
Agreed.
And it's kind of like that old theory. You can find a piece of an uneaten donut in the bottom of the waste paper basket, but do I want to go through it
to get
to it? Yeah, it's
country music. Exactly same thing.
Well, I think so.
Yeah, agreed.
I think so. Did you have fun, man?
I did. I appreciate you having me.
We should do this on a more regular basis.
Dude, I'm up. And I mean, I want to talk about the gamut. Like, I'm jealous of your UFO show. Because,
really?
Oh, dude, I'm a big believer. And I've always followed that stuff throughout my life. So
Yeah.
if you ever want a fifth person just to
right on.
add some input.
I will take that under advisement. James is amazing. Yeah, without him we couldn't do it. He's just and he's a guy of science too. He teaches. He's a science teacher, and he runs the Neil Armstrong Planetarium down in I think it's Altoona.
That's cool.
And but he has this passion for it, and he really comes at it from a pragmatic standpoint,
Right. Right.
which is cool.
Yep. I'm a full believer. So
Yeah, and the reviews are great. I never thought it would amount to much. I had him on my show and one-on-one. It was so good. I'm like, hey, I got to get like more people involved in this. And he's like, it's a good drive for him. So I really appreciate him doing that. But yeah, I can't.
But even
can't
like
believe.
you, I don't know. I think you're okay with mentioning this, and if you're not, you can edit it. But you talked about getting a couple drummers together to talk.
Damn straight.
I just think that those are such good. Get some singers, get some guitar.
We could do Vocalist.
Let's get Reb on here and do some guitar
that?
stuff. Oh, dude, in a heartbeat.
Okay. We'll
So-
talk off camera about that.
Cool.
Yeah, I love doing panel shows. The only stipulation I have now is that I must have. I'm either going to do a one-on-one show or I'm going to have both of those seats full.
Right.
I never want to do another.
Like a 3.
It's a weird thing.
Well, you and Freddie and I did one of those.
Yeah. And that with Freddie, pretty much anything works. But
I agree.
But I like it better with a fourth. There's a better dynamic. If Freddie was here and you're there, you don't feel like you're being
Right. It's kind of like the doubles thing.
And for me, having the other person there, it's like, but not somebody here, then I feel in a weird way like I have to, I somewhat intentionally have to make sure I don't end up having more of a conversation with one person than the other. And it adds a level of complexity. It's not natural.
Right.
So, but having the two other seats, it's a fucking free for all. It's awesome, man. I mean, the panel shows, and I never, David, I swear to God to you, I thought these two seats were going to sit empty the entire time. As a matter of fact, when I first started, there wasn't a microphone over here at all. I was going to have, delusions, right? I was going to have a producer sitting over here doing all this nonsense. And maybe I was going to have like my guest. And once in a while, if the guest had to bring somebody, there'd be a third. But then I said, screw that, man. Let's just put a 4-seat and see what happens. And as soon as I had my first 4-person show, and I can't remember what it was, but it was like, holy shit. It's not as good as this. This is still the purpose. But
it's just a different dynamic.
But it adds another thing. I wouldn't want to do all panel shows. No. And I wouldn't want to do all one-on-ones. Right. But this is kind of where it started for me. But the panel shows can be spectacular.
Yep.
And it's not hard to produce a good-looking show. We've got it figured out.
Dude,
for what we're doing.
The new digs is,
thank you.
Like you said,
it means a lot.
It's similar, but it's the next level. And
you think?
Yeah. And more space, more stuff to see.
Comfortable.
Visually comfortable. Yeah. It's homey.
Locations private.
Yep.
I like having no one ever sits in the chair, but it's nice to have I like the air conditioning unit. I like the space between the cameras.
You could have like a camera over there, like occasionally just go into a person that's sitting here.
Just
not even commentating. Yeah, just sitting there.
I put it's funny you said that. I don't want extra bodies in the studio. Like I've had to actually turn down a couple people, and they're probably miffed, and I'm sorry. They want to bring their handlers and things, and I just not into that. I only want, the only people involved in the studio are the people on the show.
Right.
They're invited.
Right.
And I hate to be like that, but you got to put some ground rules.
Yeah,
in.
And that's what makes your show too. That's what's cool about it.
I think so. Because I think when here's the thing: if you and I were doing this, and you had, let's say, a couple buddies came by and they just wanted to watch it, and they're sitting over there, invariably, you're going to make reference to them. They're going to make reference here. They're going to have a comment, and they're not going to be on camera. And then all of a sudden, I hate that about Rogan's show. Sometimes you'll see like Jamie contributes to Jamie's his producer, and Jamie does have a microphone, but oftentimes Jamie never knows whether he should interject or not, and he's not on camera. It just gets weird.
Right. Yeah, in this environment, you're right. You not even, in addition to the not seeing them, you're not going to necessarily hear them well enough. You're going to have to repeat things. It's
amateur hour.
Yeah,
when that happens.
That would get messy.
This is more, if you're gonna be here, you're gonna be here.
Yep.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you very much.
We'll do it again. And how can they reach you? If you can't find him, you're not looking hard enough. Throw a couple of the main spots out.
Our website is so out of date, but it's
there.
It's north of masondixon.com.
Are the local events get posted?
Yes.
Okay.
And it takes you to all the social media. But, what I always say on mic at shows is, get out your smartphones. And I said, look us up. The main thing to look up is either Nomad Country or at Nomad Country, because those are most of our social media sites.
Got it.
Facebook's a little different. You just search for our full name.
Yeah.
And I say, don't search for Nomad, because you'll find a million Nomad related things.
Got it.
And then, like I said, the main website takes you elsewhere. And I'm David August, and you can search on that and find me in a lot of places too.
The dude's got a hell of a taste in music. So if you're a rock and roll fan, pop music fan, if you lean toward the historical nature of it, like all those little crazy things, this is the man to talk to right here.
I'm by no means an expert. I just do it from the heart.
You got a lot. That's why I think
you have more than me.
No, I don't think that's the case. I think you have a more well-rounded rock and pop than me. I'm real good with the ones. I'm real specific. The ones I know pretty fucking well.
I might agree with you there.
Yeah, you have a more rounded. Now, if you want to talk about modern jazz, you want to go in that direction, I can hold my own.
I'm out.
I'm quirky.
I'm not that cultured.
I'm quirky like that, man, for sure. But it'll be interesting. Like, do you know Norm Nardini?
Yes.
Do you know Norm?
No, I don't know him. I've met him a few times. We've talked a few times, and
he's a piece of work.
He's a piece of work.
Yeah, I think so. We do a vocalist show. It might not be bad to put someone like Norm on there, and then we talk about a fourth or something. He's a great guy, man. Norm's coming back in for another one-on-one. My one-on-ones with him are just insane.
And I mean, if you get that third, get a good mix of whatever,
it can go anywhere.
It could. That would be funny.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
All right, friends.
Appreciate it.
David August. We're out. You good?
Yes, I just scraped my metal rod of my leg under the table, so that'll be.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
All right.
That's after the audio. I'm saying.
Dude, I don't worry about shit. I know.